Welcome to our deep dive for June 2026. We've seen the product statement. Let's have a look at it again. And the agenda for today is a very quick single look back on the developer program updates. Then we'll talk about the usual stuff, the best practice of the month. That's something we learned. And then we are going to have a longer Orchestrate demo. So the developer program update is just one thing for those of you who haven't been to DevCon and who haven't watched the recordings yet, or for those of you who want to rewatch the recordings and have been there or have been there, any combination possible. Here's the QR code there's the QR code. And if you scan the QR code, that should get you to the page where you can register for DevCon, and the recordings are sitting there. Should I say anything more about the recordings? Do we still have the vote?
Yeah. So keep an eye out for a note from Obina on the voting for the community vote this week. We do have deep dive recordings available to rewatch on YouTube as well, DPUCs on YouTube as well. So if you check out the DPUC from this month, you can see all kinds of good stuff about Workday DevCon. And then just a shameless plug again for our playlist that will house the deep dives. It'll have the DPUCs as well as all of our educational content. It has all the DevCon videos that were recorded at DevCon in there as well.
Okay, cool. So I'm not copying the slides. We have them now live, so no need to that. I just stole Joe because
absolutely.
How could I not?
Tony made him hair. How could you not?
Yes. So for the best practice of the month, prototype. When you are building something, you should prototype instead of spending hours thinking like, should it be like this? Should it be like that? You can just go and prototype. And with Orchestrate, especially for those of you who don't have Extend, don't have the synchronous template where you can prototype pretty quickly, then it may be hard, but you have the Workday Business Process Template. And with the Workday Business Process Template, you can prototype stuff really, really fast. I'm going to do it in the demo just to show you how fast that really is. And there's going to be one additional thing related to Orchestrate and something you probably didn't know. And something that we didn't know is that you can augment Copilot's behavior with attachments, and that's going to be the very big part of the demo that comes in a moment. So, to the demo. The demo is hiding here in the next tab. I don't have anything built yet. I'll start with the business process orchestration. As you can see, I have an integration app here, so I only have two templates, the Workday integration system and the Workday business process. So I can try the Workday business process. I'm going to say that this is my POC for whatever. And let's, because I want to sneak one more thing in, let's pretend that I want to generate some test data for my integration. That's going to do whatever. And for the test data, I want to have records with some fields. So the easiest way for me to think about the fields is to just type them in a create text template. So let's say that's going to be employee data. So I'm going to say first, last, email, and universal ID, because why not? So I have 4 fields here, and then I can just try looping over those fields by dragging the loop. The easiest iterator possible, the lines from the text file, and that should iterate over all of them. I can now add an aggregation, and let's pretend that I just need the JSON for my employee. So I'm going to select JSON from here, and my JSON fragment is going to be my empty JSON. So I'm going to say that those empty things as JSON, and I'm going to add a string value, and that's going to be whatever the field is. So that's my loop item. And then the value is, of course, going to be test, because test is the best value. Let's see if it creates a JSON that I'm looking at. Without deploying, without building, even without saving the app. I'm just going to the debugger. I need to select my tenant, so I need to have a tenant for that. I select a tenant. Hopefully the session that I have in my last tab is still active. So I just get logged into the tenant. And yep, that worked. So I can now run this. I have the output from the text template, 4 lines as expected. Going to the next step, checking the output from the loop. I got a JSON array, which is not great because it's 4 separate records. And I would want to have a single record because I probably want to have more than one of those. So not great yet, but those of you who know, those of you who don't know will know in a moment. If you don't know how to do something, it's probably because you are not using the custom aggregation. So let's try getting this from here and switching to the custom aggregation with JSON. And the difference here is going to be that I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to now paste, not paste. Because now our initial value is going to be that empty JSON with the first item and the value test. And then the next thing we want added to whatever we have, so our JSON object gets bigger. So we reference whatever we have already aggregated, and now we go add string value. And I'm going to go, again, item, and then the value test. There we go. Let's see what happens if we try running it like this. Looks like now we have a proper JSON object, that everything has a value of test. That's good enough for now, but let's imagine that email first and last are good enough as test, but UUID should be a UUID. So let's do one more trick in here. So trick number 1 is that we are using the custom aggregation, and trick number 2 is that we can sneak in a conditional here. So because I don't really remember how to build the conditional from scratch, at least not everything, I can just say that if true equals true, then we are going to have some string, otherwise we are going to have some other string or the same string. Doesn't really matter, but now it's valid. And if we switch back to pill mode, we don't. Oh, I forgot the if. That's probably why it's not working. Now it should be better. Now we have a conditional that we can edit. And now we can say that if our item is equal to UUID, I hope I didn't make a typo, then we are going to get a random UUID, maybe without my dummy text. And otherwise, we are just going to get the test as we used to have it. So now going back to the loop, and let's try running this. And we got a random UUID. That's better. Now let's get 20 of those. So that's probably one more loop. And we can go range from 1 number to 20, also number. That's already an iterator. Now grab this loop into here. Let's add an aggregation. And this one is going to be JSON. So that's our JSON, our test data. And the JSON fragment is going to be whatever comes out of that loop. Let's try running this. And now we got a JSON array with JSON object. That's great, but we would possibly want to know which one is which. So if it's the first one, the 20th one. So let's add the number, and that's going to also answer one more question that we might have. And the question is, should it be like this? Or should it just be an empty JSON and then we add the values in here? Easiest way to check, just add the number here. So that's going to be our item number from the external loop. Formatted. Let's say that we may want the leading zero. So let's add 2 zeros in here. Run this. Debug this. Run this in the debug mode. And now we see that we have the leading 0. And we also see that our first does not have the number, so that initial value is actually the first rotation of our iterator or of our internal loop. And if we left that empty, then we wouldn't have the first value. So fairly quick, we got ourselves some kind of test data. If we wanted more, we can all code it inside our internal loop, but that's fairly good, fairly quick. And remember, no saves, no deploys, it just works. So that's the quickest way to prototype. Takeaways: prototype, if you don't have extend, prototype with BP triggered, because you can run it without deploying. So you don't need to promote. That's quick. And then custom aggregation to the rescue if you can't get stuff done with the aggregations that you can find that are designed for specific types. One more thing, because I did it fairly quickly, with the custom aggregation, you select the type here. So it's still JSON because the type is JSON, and it can be any other type. You can build maps like this. You can build longer lists. You can create even a map or a list with some things that you pick from wherever in the file that you are looping through. A very, very powerful thing. So that was our best practice. And now let's do some Copilot stuff. So for the Copilot stuff, I did vibe code a specification. And so I went to Gemini and I said that, hey, check out the Workday APIs, find my favorite API, which is the one-time payment, and then generate a minimal number of fields that would come in a JSON format and create a specification for me. So that's my vibe coded specification. It's mostly as it is. As it was generated, I did fix two things here. First thing I fixed is that it generated the SOAP wrappers that I didn't want, because I want them coming from the function, so I don't want them in my input data, because otherwise it's hard to eradicate. And one more thing that I modified here is that I said that the input payload is going to come in as an array rather than as a single block of JSON, because otherwise the Copilot tends to think that this is just going to be event-based rather than a batch thingy. So that's what I also tweaked, because my assumption is that I'm building a batch thing. Then I did something that's fairly obvious. If you go for download, you can get this as a Markdown file, and that's the Markdown that I'm going to use when building. So my first attempt at the build with the Copilot. For those of you who haven't been to DevCon or who haven't tried the Copilot, a quick look what it has. So you can add sources here. So that's for the files. There in settings, you can add a rules file. You can add some skills. And also you can have multiple chats, multiple threads. You can, if there's more, you can create additional ones. The thread will get automatically renamed based on what we do. We have edit mode. We have ask mode. The ask mode is for asking questions, so it's not going to make any modifications to your orchestration, while the edit mode, well, it will probably modify stuff if you ask for that. So I showed you the specification, and then some hints for what we will be looking at later, because if we look at the guide that I'm going to paste the link into the chat, into the doc, in the docs, not the guide, we talk generally about what the Copilot is. We talk about the edit and the ask modes. We talk about the threads, so those are the things that I showed you. And then we have three other topics that talk about rules and skills, and then rules, and then skills, each separately. We are going to look into them later in the demo, but first we are just going to try to get something created based on our specification in the Markdown file. So I'm loading the specification. It's way better than just trying to type all what you want done into the chat window. In general, if you have a document, just attach the document. That's way better than trying to explain what the document contains. So create an integration based on the attached spec. And now Copilot is going to analyze the file and create something based on that file. It's probably not going to be to my liking, I can tweak that with rules. So we'll try adding some rules for that in a moment, but right now we got a plan, and our plan says that it's going to configure the start node, then add an HTTP request step, which makes sense because I said that the data is going to come from somewhere external in a JSON, so that's okay. Then it's going to loop and then create a text template inside the loop. It will use the correct API and then use a send Workday API request. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, I'm just going to say do it. And I will probably get some steps out of it, unless Copilot finds that I'm missing something in my spec and will ask me more questions. If I click here, it's going to show the whole log of the things that Copilot is saying. So it's not just a rotating, or not a rotating, but a highlighting stars. You can see that there's stuff happening in the background. Okay, we got a very, very minimal integration here. It has the HTTP request, the loop, the create text template, and then an API request. But I would want some error handling, so I can say add some error handling in case the the external API returns no records. And I'll probably get something, but that's probably repetitive. I may want error handling in everything that I build, not in just this one thing that I'm working on right now. So while this is something that I can do if I'm doing this for the first time, it's not going to serve me well long time because I'll be typing a lot. I can create a file and just copy paste from that file, like add error handling now, add something else. But that feels like some basic rules for what we are trying to get. So when this finishes, I'm going to add the rules file and see if we can get it quicker with the rules file instead of typing stuff one by one. There we go. We got some kind of error handling. So let's see. There's a check if the payment was successful and the JSON contains at least one element. Yep, that makes sense. And if it doesn't, then we get a message saying that no records were returned. I would probably want a different severity here, so I can go back, say, hey, change the severity. Or I can just flip the severity myself. If I'm satisfied with it, I'm just going to say accept, and I'll get this to work further on. Now, when I save, the Copilot icons disappeared, and I can now chat with Copilot to get more changes done. And let me just try one more thing, maybe change the severity on the message. And when Copilot does that, I'm going to show you what happens when you press the other button, because I did press the accept button, and we have also the decline button. And that's also the reason why I accepted even I'm not completely satisfied with the result, because if my prompt messes something up the way that I really don't like it, and I want to reject, it's going to reject everything that has the Copilot icon on it. So right now, if I reject, the severity is going to go back to info. If I did this without saving and I thought, no, I don't like it, I reject it, I would end with the empty orchestration. So that's why my suggestion is you should probably be saving when you get to a specific point that you think, yeah, that's a milestone for me. Save. You may want to also save to AppHub, so then you can revert to that. I guess I did something funny with my session, but let's hope for the best. I'm going to reload the page. And I'm going to create one more orchestration. And now let's try this with the rules. Feels like I have a VPN issue, but maybe I can manage without. So I'm going to create one more integration system that's going to be my Copilot in inbound 2. And now I'm going to get some rules So in Copilot, under the cogwheel, under the settings, I can add the rules MD file, and my rules MD is loaded. It has some rules. Doesn't really matter what they say. Let's see if the integration is going to be different. So right now I added the same spec. So based on the spec and the rules MD, create the integration. And stuff is going to be happening. While it happens, I'll try to show you the rules MD that I'm using here. For that, I will just drag it into the browser and hope for the best. There we go. So my rules MD file is a general. I have it generalized for all the integrations that would be using the external HTTP and coming in. So it tells about the steps that are being used. It talks about the flow. It has some definitions of the steps that I expect in my orchestration. It talks about the integration attributes. It talks about how the data is fetched. It's not a complete blueprint of the integration that we are getting, because we can reuse it for multiple HTTP inbounds, but they will all look similarly. Like all connector and DT integrations look similar. There's a connector and there's a DT. So that's a pattern, and this rules MD file also describes a pattern. I could make it very specific for this integration, or I can make it generic enough that I can reuse it for multiple inbound integrations. So this is quite different from what we've had before, because we have an integration message that just says that the integration was started, which is quite nice. It also lists all the attributes that were used. So when we launch it, at least we know that it ran. It then runs the external HTTP call, and it makes some checks. It makes a check if it completed with a 200 status code, and it also counts the items if it's greater than 0, and then if both of them are true, then we'll go to the loop. The loop has a text template. We have a submit payment, and then we also have a log to file that does tell us if it was successful or failed based on the response from the Workday API. So that's quite better, and we can reuse it for multiple Workday inbounds. I can accept this, and now I can iterate more. I can replace the rules file if I really want to, or I can reuse this rules file in another integration. Let's try doing this again. It never gets boring, because now we are going to do something similar with a skill. So that's going to be my Copilot inbound 3. And with my Copilot inbound 3, I'm going to attach a skill. The rules MD file is orchestration specific, so the file that I loaded is not available in this orchestration. I can load it again, but I want to use a skill for this one. So I'm going to use a skill, and now I can use this skill by typing / and the name, and the skill is named MW external HTTP. I can also get to the skill with the plus and then the skills drop down. It shows funny, but if I go to custom skills, it shows my skill again / the name of the skill. So using this skill, build the integration based on the attached spec. And I'm going to attach the spec file again. Okay, it's attached. Let's run this. Let's see how it's going to end up with the skill. The skill is specific, so we can get specific results based on that. We can also use the skill or multiple skills, and we can also combine them with the rules. So when it generates, we'll see if we are completely satisfied with it or if we can get it fine-tuned with the rules. Okay, we got something. It looks fairly similar to what we had before, but this comes out of the skill, this time not based on the rules. Quick check. Ooh, the log didn't generate this time. And it looks like also we have an error somewhere. So let's check what error do we have. Function count items cannot be applied to an instance of data type. That probably means that our HTTP didn't get the response type. So if I say JSON here, then our error is gone. Okay, so I was able to fix this. I can now accept. And let's see if we can get stuff optimized further on with the rules. So I'm going to attach the rules again. Okay, good. And let's switch to the ask mode and analyze. Oh, wait, we have a skill for that. We have a skill WDCLI audit. And you can use the audit skill to create an audit. Let's see what we get from it. So the skill files are fairly easy because they are just Markdown. So not a very complex format. I can show you the skill file. Wait, I just need to find the correct window. So the skill file that I used is like this. It has a name, it has a description of the skill, and then it explains what the skill doesn't do. And then it also explains basically the format of the orchestration. This skill is fairly similar to what we had in the rules file, but it's not exactly the same. And it also allows for further analysis, as we can see here. So we have a violation here that our output from the HTTP step is there's as JSON somewhere there. If I double click, it opens in a new window. So we have that one rule is broken or violated. And we also see that it was validated against both the skill and the rules file. And now we have that something that needs to be fixed. So first of all, we can just copy this and use it in a document. But we can also go back to the edit mode and try to fix this. So fix the violation. There we go. And the SJSON is gone. So now it's fixed. It's compliant with the rules that we've set, and everything should be fine. Now there's a good question in the chat, and there's also an answer to that question in the chat. So yeah, as you have seen, I've got this integration that has how many steps? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9 steps. I had a 9-step orchestration generated 3 times within 20 minutes of the demo. I could create one of those step by step, explaining everything, but then I would probably spend some time getting the JSON paths out. And the JSON paths are here. They are fairly simple, but I would still need to go copy paste. I would need to play with those expressions. And when I have this in my template, then I get the template. I have in my skill or in my rules. I get the create text template. I get the API request. I get the log to file. That, by the way, does it do something? No. So I can also get fix the log2 file. Let's see if I'm vague enough or not for this to work. But we get repeatability and we also get some predictability. Remember that this is generative AI, so you shouldn't expect predictability unless you try to enforce it somehow. And skill is a way to enforce predictability for specific patterns. And also rules file is also a way to get predictability or your preferences or your company requirements into the things that are being generated. For example, we can have the rules MD that's going to be universal and you're going to apply this to every orchestration that you have. You can have a naming convention for the steps. You can have the naming convention for the keys inside the steps, for everything that's being generated, for how your log files are named, for the format of the log files. Because if we look at the log file here, which didn't get fixed, but if we look at the log file in one of our other orchestrations that was generated, I think this one, there we go. So we have a log file that has 4 columns. It's using a custom format for the log file. So it created the CSV format. It created then the fields in that format and filled them with values. By the way, this doesn't show in the UI right now, but if we go for equals true and then equals true here, then it should now have a pill mode. But I'd say that I probably liked the previous version better because at least I've seen what was inside. But now I can open, I can edit, I can add more layers. So that's also good. So we can get predictability for the log formats. We can get predictability for how we handle APIs. We can get predictability for many other things that we want our orchestrations do. And then we can do the creative work on our own. I could probably apply those rules here to my proof of concept. If I go here and then I go for the Workday convention skills, fix the naming. That should do something nice with this orchestration here that I just, created off the cuff to test something. There we go. So now we have the outer loop, we have the worker loop. Yeah, probably outer loop didn't make much sense because it just went over the numbers. But then in our aggregations, we have a nicer name than what we had before. And then in here, we also have a nicer name than we had before. So it did something. I didn't give it many places to do something useful, but we got to a place where at least it's not loop and loop_1. If I didn't want the name of the component inside the name of the step, so outer loop, worker loop, I can have it in my rules, like avoid naming steps with the component names. Then it would get something. Done differently. And with this, I think I'm open for questions. Yeah, you need to post questions to the chat. I thought I'm going to be alone, so I disabled Q&A for this one. So don't look for the Q&A icon.
Mark, did you already get the one about question when using local folder? Opening from local folder is not currently compatible with Developer Copilot for Orchestrate.
Maybe. I haven't tried that. So I don't know, but I'm going to take a note on this, and if it is, I will let the product managers know. They want to know.
Yeah, Mark, thank you for the question. What else? Is it possible to download the rules from an existing integration?
So that's a good question because I don't remember one thing. For sure, if you have the chats that you had with Copilot, so let's say I'm going to go for my chat number 2, and then from my chat number 2, I have my old thread, so I can go back here, and then I have the rules here, but I cannot download it. So the answer is no. Let's see. No.
All right. Vamshi asks, do we need to learn how to write skills files? Is it straightforward?
Yes.
Is it like
Yes,
XML
it's
or
straightforward.
XSLT?
So it's straightforward, and I'm going to share a little secret. I didn't write that because I'm lazy, and so I just
What?
pointed. I just pointed a I would say a Copilot-like tool from a third party at the documentation side, and basically described what I want in it, and to go along with this format. And I also gave it a sample that I got from someone else, and I got those things generated. I did iterate on them for a while, so I got good results, but I did not write them on my own. I don't think you would need to be writing them on your own, unless you just go reading through it and see like, oh, that's clearly a hallucination, you just want it removed. But otherwise, they are, if you explain well enough, you are going to get something formatted properly, so don't worry about the formatting.
And
then several. Go ahead, Obina.
Oh, no, I was going to say, while we're on the topic of skills, you could even have a skill that validates your skill by like asking you questions. So, does this make sense to having a skill? And there's like a templated format of how to tailor your skill that it meets the guardrails, requirements, ensures that it's not hallucinating, ensures that it gets you and the agent get into like this design concept agreement before it goes over to be like an actual skill that you can invoke. So yeah, there's so much fun things you can. Sorry, I had skill and I just was like, yeah.
Yep. So about WDCLI, I don't remember all of the functionalities that we have there, but the basic ones, you can log in, of course. You can log into the tenant. You can push your app from your computer to the dev site. You can create a blank app. You can download it. So you can create blank, you can upload, you can download, and you can also deploy to a specific tenant. So I would say the basics that you may want to, if you want to have a local repository, then you can just be downloading the app and committing it to the repository. When working inside the dev site orchestration builder extent or in extent, you can always download the app with the CLI and commit it to a local repository. Yeah, so that's what I've been using it at least for. Developer Copilot available to non-extend Pro SKU customers. I don't know that, but it's a very good question. I think
stay tuned. Stay tuned is
you can also bring
say.
this to your CSM. Yeah, I can share those files.
Go ahead.
And
yeah,
then
any kind of sample repository we can get. I think we hear you big time.
Yep. Yeah, and then remember to rename this because otherwise I'm going to see my initials everywhere. Okay, if there are no more questions, then I'm going to stop my screen share. Final call for any questions. Can you use existing?
Pradeep has his hand up. Do you have a question in the chat, maybe?
Yep.
We gotta grant voices.
Yeah, so
we find you.
Can we use existing sub-orchestrations? Yes, we can. However, Copilot right now will not create multi-orchestration flows. So it will create a single orchestration, but it's not going to split it into sub-orchestrations and then have it, I would say, properly or nicely divided into multiple places. So right now the rules are attached to a single orchestration. So while you can have a company repository for rules, you will need to be enforcing people to load them to every orchestration that they work on, because the rules is orchestration specific. In the future, instead of Gemini for Copilot, are there any plans to use Claude? I don't know. I don't even know if you use Gemini for Copilot, but the way it apologizes, maybe.
We advertise it as such.
We do?
Is what I'll
Okay.
say. Is what I'll say out loud. But I know Anil always says he's friends with Dario. I've heard him say that more than once, so never say never. I, of course, safe harbor all over the place. I'm mostly joking over a cup of coffee. Never say never. Ooh, and Doug's in the chat. Third-party agent is on the roadmap. Love it.
Good, good. So since we have Doug in the room, now you can bring all the hard questions. So that's a good question about Copilot making up SOAP requests. The best thing to do is to create an attachment. If you know which SOAP action you want taken, I think that deserves a screen share. So let me get back to my screen share. So if we go to, probably wrong window, but I'm going to go to community and then for the web services. Because I'm logged into the dev site, I won't be able to see the public facing APIs page, but I can get one from community. So give me a second. If I go to my SOAP APIs, when it loads, that's wrong. I wanted to click on the reference. And then if I go to my directory, and I know that I want to go for the academic advising service and I want the get advisors call, I would then click on the XML request here. I would save it as a file, and then I would add it in to Copilot as an attachment saying, this is the API call that you must use. And that it won't be hallucinating, it will use the thing that you attached. So we'll have the file attached on the forum post, where we'll have the link to the YouTube video. I guess we are going to upload this to YouTube, so yep. So yeah, we'll have the file attached to the post. So I don't need to collect all your emails and process all that information.
Brilliant. Great session, Mark. Thank you for hosting.
Thank you very much. Thank you for thank you for coming and helping.
We've got the squad here.
Yes, yes. And thank you everyone for joining. It was a great pleasure as always, and see you in July.